Have you ever wondered why the most powerful people seem to walk into a room and command presence without saying a single word? Why some individuals radiate confidence while others scream for attention and still remain invisible? There's a reason for that, and it's not charisma, not talent, not beauty. It's self-possession. And in this video, you're going to discover how Neville Goddard's forgotten teachings can show you how to achieve that, not by trying harder, not by saying more, but by doing the exact opposite, acting like you don't want anyone's attention. That's right. The very power you're chasing by being seen, validated, or praised is quietly hiding in your ability to let go of the need for attention. Neville didn't just talk about imagination, he revealed something much deeper. The secret that who you assume you are in silence shapes how the entire world responds to you. This isn't about becoming indifferent. This is about becoming undeniable. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you will learn why trying to impress people weakens your inner power, how Neville Goddard's method of assumption quietly transforms your self-image, and how to completely shift your reality, not by shouting louder, but by becoming so aligned with your vision that the world has no choice but to mirror it. You'll also discover a rarely discussed moment in Neville's life, one that proves how the man who says nothing often has the most to say. And if you're patient enough to watch till the end, I'll share one powerful Neville technique that rewires your identity and helps you rise above the noise forever. But first, let's talk about a truth no one wants to admit. Most people don't actually want to grow. They want to be seen growing. They want to post the journey. They want others to say, wow, look at you. They want applause, hearts, reaction, and in the process, they abandon the very transformation they seek, because the need to be seen becomes stronger than the need to become. Neville Goddard warned of this trap in subtle ways. He said, you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He didn't say assume the look of someone who's fulfilled. He didn't say make sure everyone notices you changing. He taught us to live in the state of the end, quietly, faithfully, internally. Because when you truly shift within, you no longer feel the urge to be seen. You become the silent architect of your reality. Now think of this. How many times have you caught yourself imagining success, not for your own peace, but for someone else to see it, for someone to say, you did it. That's not transformation, that's performance. And Neville's work was never meant to help you perform. It was meant to help you become. Let me tell you something curious about Neville. He didn't live loudly. He wasn't chasing crowds or trying to be famous. He wasn't obsessed with followers. In fact, there's a period in Neville's life, rarely discussed, when he stopped lecturing altogether. Not because people weren't listening, but because he realized something: real power is quiet. Real transformation doesn't beg for attention. And the deepest shifts often happen when no one is watching. He later returned to teaching, not for applause, but for alignment, because he knew that those who truly understand the law don't need a spotlight. They need only one thing: faith in their inner reality. So why should you act like you don't want anyone's attention? Because the moment you stop chasing it is the moment you become truly magnetic. There's an irony here. The people you admire, the ones who walk tall, speak little, and seem untouchable, most of them aren't trying to be admired. They've just mastered the art of being complete within themselves. Neville's message was simple: stop trying to be noticed and start noticing who you already are. The world mirrors your self-concept, not your effort, not your desperation, just your quiet conviction. And that's exactly what this video will help you develop. So if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been overlooked, if you've ever wondered why the louder you try, the less they hear, this message is for you. You don't need to shout. You don't need to prove. You need only one thing: to shift your assumption of who you are. Because once you do, everything else, attention, respect, love, abundance, it flows. Not because you chased it, but because it recognized who you had become, and it came to meet you. Welcome to Ignis Mindset, a place where we don't just talk about change, we live it, we breathe it, We embody it. If you're ready to master Neville Goddard's most underrated teaching and finally understand what it means to live in true self-alignment, subscribe now and tap the bell icon. This isn't just another motivational video, this is your turning point. And it begins in silence. Let's begin. Before we talk about the transformation that happens when you fully assume the state of your desired self, we need to expose a silent trap. A trap so subtle that most people don't even know they've fallen into it. It's the trap of needing to be seen. The moment you crave being noticed, being validated, being applauded, you give away your power. You begin constructing your identity based on how others respond to you rather than who you know yourself to be. Neville Goddard didn't teach you to depend on the world for confirmation. He taught you to live from the end, to walk in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That means your transformation is complete within. You don't wait for anyone to approve of it. You don't need someone to say, now I believe you've changed. When you assume the new state correctly, you carry it quietly, and it carries you without resistance. Here's the danger. The moment you start checking the mirror, watching the reactions, or waiting for applause, your focus shifts from the inner to the outer. You're no longer in the state. You're outside of it looking for proof. And as Neville taught, the moment you look to the world for proof, you admit that you haven't fully assumed it. That's why people say, I tried to manifest, but nothing happened. Because deep down, they were still waiting for the world to believe them. But your world can only reflect what you've already accepted as true inside yourself. Let's take a step back and look at why this is so important. Neville spoke often about self-concept. He said, you rise or fall in life by the assumptions you make about yourself. What do you believe yourself to be? Not what you hope to be. Not what you want others to see. What do you assume to be true about you? Because your assumptions are what create the fabric of your reality. When you crave validation, you're saying, I don't yet believe I am this, so I need you to confirm it for me. A true transformation doesn't beg for agreement. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't even need understanding. It lives in you like breath. Quiet, natural, unshakable. That's where detachment comes in. Detachment isn't about not caring. It's about not needing. You still act, you still live, you still love, but you don't do it to be seen. You don't do it to be approved. You do it because it is the natural expression of who you now are. Neville said, dare to believe in the reality of your assumption and watch the world play its part relative to its fulfillment. He didn't say, dare to believe and then watch if people believe with you. That's irrelevant. Detachment strengthens confidence in a way attention never can, because when you're detached, you're knocked up and down based on what someone says or doesn't say. You're not thrown off by silence. You're not energized by praise. You're consistent. You're centered. And that steadiness, that unshaken knowing, that's what creates real results. There's an elegance in living from the end without explaining yourself, without broadcasting your goals, without needing someone to say, good job. Neville never taught us to manifest praise. He taught us to manifest states of being. If you want to feel powerful, don't wait for someone to tell you you're powerful. Feel it, assume it, embody it. Let it sink so deeply into your core that whether anyone sees it or not, you are. Now let's go deeper. What does it really mean to live from the end? Most people misunderstand this. They think it means visualizing the outcome, but it's more than a picture in your mind. It's a shift in identity. It's waking up in the morning and saying, this is who I am now. Not someday, not when they believe me. Now. And then you move through the world from that place. Living from the end doesn't mean pretending. It doesn't mean posting about your future life as if it's already here just to get attention. It means truly occupying the state internally, quietly, no fanfare. Because when you really live in the end, the desire to prove disappears. You're no longer interested in reactions. You're focused on embodiment. Imagine someone who is already successful. They don't go around saying, look at how successful I am. They just are. Their decisions, their demeanor, their energy, it reflects success. That's what Neville meant. You don't talk about being it, you become it. And if others notice, fine. If they don't, also fine, because you're not doing it for them. This brings us back to detachment. True detachment is freedom. When you stop needing to be seen, you're free to evolve without resistance. You're not waiting for permission. You're not chained to opinions. You move with quiet confidence, trusting that your inner shift is already enough. Neville told a story once of a man who wanted a promotion. Instead of trying to impress his boss or talk his way into recognition, the man simply assumed he already held the new position. He imagined walking into the office, sitting at the desk, signing papers with the new title. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't chase. He assumed, and the world, as it always does, moved to fulfill his assumption. He was promoted shortly after. Notice the key detail. He didn't try to be seen. He tried to be it. And that difference is everything. When you stop needing others to notice, you become someone they can't help but notice. Because your energy shifts, your presence becomes fuller, your silence becomes louder than any performance could ever be. Neville emphasized over and over again, change your conception of yourself, and you will automatically change the world in which you live. But he never said to wait for the world to agree. He never said to prove your change. The only thing you must do is assume it, because the moment you do, the world bends to match. So ask yourself, who are you becoming? Not in theory, not for display, but in silence, in your most private moments, where no one's watching. Who are you in that space? Because that's the only version that matters. And that's the version the world will reflect back to you. And as you practice this, as you let go of the need for applause and fully embrace the feeling of being enough as you are, you will notice something miraculous. The quieter you become, the more powerful your presence grows. The less you seek validation, the more naturally it arrives. And not because you begged for it, but because you no longer need it. Neville's work wasn't about appearances. It was about transformation. Real, quiet, lasting change. And that kind of change doesn't need an audience. It only needs your commitment, your stillness, your willingness to believe in the unseen until it becomes seen. And when it does, you'll know, not because they told you, but because you became it, long before anyone could see it. The new self walks in quiet certainty. It doesn't beg for anything, doesn't perform for praise, and doesn't seek approval from the world. It moves with quiet assurance rooted in inner conviction. There's no desperation in its steps, no need to prove, no energy wasted on making others understand. When you truly step into your new self, it becomes impossible to chase what you know is already yours. You carry yourself differently, speak differently, think differently, not because someone told you to, but because the assumption of your new state reshapes everything from the inside out. Neville Goddard taught that assumption is the key to all transformation. Once you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, your world must conform. But this assumption must be pure, unmixed with doubt, free from performance and divorced from the need for external confirmation. The old self is full of needing, needing to be liked, needing to be heard, needing to be chosen. It acts from lack, believing that attention from others will make it real. But the new self acts from fullness. It doesn't knock on closed doors. It doesn't explain or justify. It simply is. The old self looks to the world and says, am I good enough? The new self looks inward and replies, I already am. There's no need to announce a change when the change is real. The fragrance of it follows you without effort. You don't have to say you're becoming successful. You don't have to explain how you've evolved. The way you carry yourself becomes the message. And that's why Neville always pointed inward. He knew that the only work that matters is done in silence, deep within the mind where assumptions are born and realities begin to take shape. To live from this place every day requires discipline, Not the rigid kind that forces outcomes, but the soft strength of choosing new thoughts consistently. Inner conversations shape our lives more than anything else. When your inner dialogue is rooted in lack, in fear, in self-doubt, it manifests outwardly. But when you cultivate inner conversations that align with the new you, your outer world has no choice but to adjust. Every day, check your inner tone. Are you pleading for things to happen? Are you mentally explaining yourself to imaginary people? Or are you calmly affirming that your desires are already realized? Neville said that inner speech mirrors the outer world. You cannot think one thing within and expect a different result outside. So choose your inner words wisely. Let them be simple, powerful, and aligned, not to manipulate reality, but to reflect the truth of your new identity. This is where the mental diet becomes essential. It's not just about thinking positively. It's about refusing to indulge in thoughts that contradict your desired state. Every time you entertain doubt, fear, or comparison, you reinforce the old self. But every time you choose a thought that aligns with your future, even in silence, you are shifting quietly, effectively. It's in that silence where real power lives. The old self reacts, it defends, it explains. But the new self responds with calm or says nothing at all. Silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. When you can hold your ground without explaining yourself, you're no longer controlled by the world. You've returned to the center. Neville often reminded us that the world is ourselves pushed out. So if we want peace outside, we must first create it inside. Reaction is the hallmark of the old self. When something doesn't go as expected, the old self panics, protests, or performs to win back control. But the new self knows that nothing is truly lost. It stays composed, trusting that all things are working behind the scenes. This is the kind of faith that Neville called living in the end. It's not loud faith. It's not desperate faith. It's quiet, steady knowing, and it comes only when your self-concept has truly changed. There's great strength in not needing permission, in not asking others what they think of your journey, in not waiting for applause before you take the next step. The new self doesn't pause to get approval. It moves. It builds. It embodies, and the world, slowly but surely, catches up to that vibration. But it all begins with how you see yourself, not in public, but in private. Every time you catch yourself seeking, asking, wondering how others will respond, pause. That's the voice of the old self. The new self doesn't need to wonder how things will unfold. It assumes they already have. It doesn't tell the world, watch what I'm about to do. It simply does it, quietly, powerfully. This is the quiet revolution Neville spoke about. Not shouting from the rooftops that you've changed, not trying to convince anyone, but living as if it were already so. Your posture changes, your language shifts, your energy becomes undeniable, and all without needing to say a word. Results don't come from noise, they come from alignment, from the way you hold your vision when no one's watching, from the way you wake up and walk through your day, already embodying the reality you've claimed. That's the secret. That's the power. It doesn't come from trying to impress. It comes from quietly being the person who no longer needs to. When you truly grasp this, something clicks. You realize you don't need to post every breakthrough. You don't need to talk about every dream. You don't need to make announcements about your next move because the transformation is already happening and the results will speak for themselves in time. There's a stillness in people who have shifted for real, a calmness, a softness that doesn't need to be seen to be certain. And that stillness is more magnetic than any performance could ever be. Neville's message was always this: change yourself and your world will reflect it. But the change must be deep, authentic, and unshakable. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about actually not needing the things you once craved. Not because they aren't good, but because your new self doesn't depend on them. It already knows its worth. it already feels fulfilled. And from that place, everything you need flows with ease. So every moment you have a choice to return to the old self that performs and pleads, or to stand tall in the quiet confidence of the new self that moves without needing to be seen. That's where your true power lives, in the silence, in the stillness, in the decision to be without needing to prove. Everyone wants to be seen, but not everyone is aligned. The world encourages visibility, posting, proving, performing. But what happens when attention becomes the goal instead of alignment? What happens when you start chasing noise instead of cultivating inner clarity? You begin to lose yourself in the image you think others want and forget the quiet power of simply being true to who you are. Neville Goddard never taught people to scream for recognition. He didn't preach performance. He reminded us that consciousness is the only reality, and from your state of consciousness, everything flows. So the real question isn't, how can I get more people to notice me? The real question is, am I living in alignment with who I've decided to be? One will exhaust you, the other will renew you daily. When you're aligned, you don't care if applause is absent. You know what you're doing, you're in tune with the version of yourself you've assumed. You're no longer tempted by temporary attention because you've tasted the richness of long-term peace. And this peace, it doesn't shout, it doesn't demand the spotlight. It just exists, steady, unshaken. Most people aren't looking for attention. They're looking for a feeling they think attention will give them. Maybe it's validation. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's proof that they matter. But Neville would challenge that. He would say, instead of trying to get it from the outside, embody the feeling now. Feel that you are already loved. Feel that you already matter. Assume the state that gives you the feeling you're chasing. When you assume correctly, your world conforms, not because you chased it down, but because you aligned yourself with it. Neville's method was always subtle, inner, and deeply personal. He wasn't interested in people performing new identities for the world. He taught you to become so saturated in the new belief that you don't need to say a word. The world adjusts because your inner reality shifted. Choosing alignment means you stop living for likes and views, for praise or approval. You choose stillness over speed, truth over trend, peace over popularity. This doesn't mean you won't be seen. It means your visibility is no longer your lifeline. You're no longer controlled by it. You've anchored yourself deeper than that. You wake up each day and you align before you engage. You remember who you've chosen to be. You speak inwardly to yourself in ways that affirm this identity. Not just affirmations for the sake of repetition, but powerful declarations that build your core. Words like, I am already enough. I am rooted in my vision. I no longer seek what I already possess. These are more than just statements. They're shifts in awareness. Neville emphasized the power of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But that assumption must be stabilized daily. And one of the most effective tools to do this is repetition, intentional, conscious repetition, not robotic phrases, but deliberate thoughts that carry emotional resonance. When repeated consistently, these thoughts reset the nervous system, reshape self-perception, and rewire identity. Your words must be soaked in belief. Say them as if they're true, and over time, your subconscious accepts them as reality. And once the subconscious is impressed, the outer world has no choice but to obey. You become what you've claimed internally, and nothing can stop the unfolding of that identity. Not delay, not doubt, not silence. Alignment is magnetic even if invisible at first. To maintain alignment, you must also guard your mind from noise. The world will tempt you constantly. Look at them, look what they have. Listen to this opinion. Chase this approval. But alignment means choosing quiet when the crowd roars. It means staying grounded in who you are, even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. This is the hidden path to power. It's not loud. It's not glamorous, but it's deeply transformative. When you live from the end, as Neville taught, you no longer operate from need. You operate from certainty, and in that certainty, You attract the right people, opportunities, and experiences, not because you begged for them, but because they matched the new version of you. You don't have to announce who you are, you just have to be it. And when you are it, consistently and quietly, the world begins to see it without you trying to show them. That's the irony of this work. The less you perform, the more powerful you become. The less you seek attention, the more energy you have to create real alignment. Attention is temporary. It fades. It's based on others. But alignment is yours forever. It stays even when the lights go off. It keeps you grounded in storms, centered in chaos, and fulfilled in silence. You don't need to be seen to be successful. You need to be certain, certain in your identity, certain in your assumption, certain in your inner truth. When you reach that level of self-possession, you don't chase because you already are. You don't fear silence because you know what is growing inside you. You don't demand results. You expect them, not arrogantly, but confidently. Because the law is always at work, and when the law is impressed with your inner vision, the outer world bends to meet it. So the next time you feel the urge to post, prove, or perform, pause, ask yourself, am I aligned with who I've decided to be, or am I trying to get someone to notice what I'm unsure about? That one question can reset your trajectory. You don't need to be seen to be powerful. You need to be rooted. You need to be aligned. You need to assume the identity that already has what you want and live from that. That's how things change. That's how realities shift. Not through noise, but through knowing. Let your presence be the proof. Let your stillness be the sign. Let your peace be the loudest message. You don't need to say much when your alignment says everything. And once that's locked in, nothing can stop the unfolding. It's already done.